right, welcome to the Libertarian Alternative. My name is Mark Selzer, and the Libertarian Alternative is an educational television show brought to you as a service by the Libertarian Party. And my co-host today is Angela Keaton. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you, Mark.
How are you doing today?
Fantastic.
Good. And today's guest, and thank you very much for coming out, former White House economist Joe Cobb. Now, you were with the Reagan administration?
In the first term, 1981, 1983, yes.
And what did you do there?
I was the Deputy Director of the Office of Policy Information. The office that I worked for basically defined what the ideas of the Reagan White House were all about.
And we didn't get as ideologically as long to libertarianism as we would have liked.
That's one of the reasons I left.
Then.
They were just not good enough for me.
But now you've become a candidate for the Libertarian Party and have been
I've run for Congress. I've run for Congress twice, and today I'm the chairman of the Libertarian Party of Orange County.
Wonderful. So today we wanted to talk about pensions. Now, pensions have been in the news lately. There was an front page article recently on the LA Times about the problem with pensions, and that this is draining the taxpayers in California and many of the cities in California dry.
The pension problem is nationwide. California is particularly hard hit because our government has dramatically increased the pension formula for government workers. And that's a future burden on taxpayers in California. And the government has done nothing to pay for it. So it's a future bankruptcy problem.
There's no money there.
There's no money there now, and there's no plans for money in the future.
Mr. Cobb, how does the pension system work? I'm new to California and I don't know anything about pensions.
Well, for government employees, the pension system is the old-fashioned method in which you work for 20, 30, 40 years for the government, and you get certain percentage points for each year you work. And then you have a final salary. When you retire, you're earning some money, $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 a year, and then you get a certain percentage of that for the rest of your life until you die. That's the old-fashioned pension plan, and that's what government workers all have. It's the most expensive kind of pension plan any employer can offer, and that's why the government can't afford it.
Now I've heard that librarians are retiring as millionaires in California. This is a really good job to have because essentially when you retire, you're a millionaire. Now,
if you have a final salary that's in the neighborhood of $100,000, and you're going to get a pension every year for the rest of your life for something like $70,000 or $80,000,
wow,
then you live 15 more years, you've had more than $1 million.
And this is a problem, the same problem Social Security is having.
It's exactly the same problem that Social Security is having.
People are living longer than when they initially came up with these plans.
And originally, the pensions were much more cheap. But now, recently, they've inflated private pensions and government pensions to very high levels for government workers.
Why is that? How did that happen? One-party control?
No, it's really union control of government. The unions have such an important influence in elections because of the ability to collect union dues forcefully from even non-members and then use that money in political campaigns. The unions are able to elect the government officers, the government board members, the members of the legislature, who then vote for these things. It's like I elect the person that I'm going to negotiate with so that he will agree to give me a more generous benefit.
So the mice are watching the cheese, but they've eaten it all.
Well, the other big problem is what they've done is they've imposed a future debt on taxpayers. We're either going to do the big bad thing and simply reduce pensions, or we're going to pay the pensions, honor the pensions. We would like to honor promises. But the only way these expensive government pensions can be paid is by raising taxes. Now, if the government elected officials had passed a bond, you know, a debt that has to be paid off by future taxpayers to build a highway or to build a school, that would be something the taxpayers would have voted for. These pensions are never put up for a vote. They're just smuggled in as future tax duties for taxpayers to pay.
For someone in private business, what would be like a typical pension? I mean, how does that work out outside the government?
Well, if you have an older company like General Motors or United Airlines, They have the same old-fashioned pension system, a certain formula based on the number of years you work and what your final salary is. All of these older private sector pensions are now also heading for bankruptcy. There are 44 million American workers that are covered by the old-fashioned pension formula. Different formulas for different companies. United Airlines just turned their pension over to the government agency, the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. And now the taxpayers, the Congress, is going to have to bail out United Airlines.
How does that work? So this is just another more corporate welfare.
It's corporate welfare.
Pension department.
It's just like the savings and loan bailout of the 1980s and 1990s. Mm-hmm. The government guarantees bank accounts. Well, when the banks embezzle the money or lose the money, the government has to step in and make the depositors good by raising taxes and paying the money to the depositors. You know, we tend to agree that it's a good idea that innocent people shouldn't be victimized. These pensions are another example in which you had a union and some management that's long since retired negotiated a pension formula, but now the companies cannot pay. And so they're trying to dump it off on the taxpayers.
So the money wasn't put securely in a bank account, the same instance that we have with the government where the money for those pensions doesn't exist and isn't securely somewhere in a bank account.
That's right. As a matter of fact, the government's Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation is already $23 billion in the hole.
Wow.
It owes that money and cannot pay it. And the Governmental Accountability Office, an agency of Congress, put out a report last month that just said up to $250 billion is going to be due in the next 10 or 15 years.
Wow. It sounds a little like Carl Sagan and his billions and billions of stars, billions and billions of tax dollars due. And you know, the thing is about a billion, we throw these, on these policy wonk shows, we throw this term billion around like it's nothing, but you know, if you started counting now to a billion by 1, 2, 3, you wouldn't make it before you died.
Well,
so much money that is.
The number I like is if you start counting backwards and you count every second, you count a digit. A billion seconds ago was 1959.
Oh, God.
A billion minutes ago, Christ was born.
Wow. So, you know, and we're using a lot of terms here, corporate welfare and the government backing up the pension plan. Another word for all of those terms that you can use just one word for all of them, many of the terms we're using here, is tax raise.
Tax increases.
Tax increases. You know, the Democrats and Republicans seem to always have a different, they kind of take turns, each administration, thinking up new things to call a tax raise. The living wage, it's a tax raise. The, you know, guaranteeing the pensions, it's a tax raise. Corporate welfare, it's a tax raise. Bailout, it's a tax raise.
The reason I really oppose using the tax system to pay these future obligations is because the tax system is imposed on little people and larger, wealthier people alike. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, the sales tax is the typical tax that would have to be raised in California. What we need to do is to change our pension system from one where you simply make promises that you expect future people to pay for. Change it to a system in which people are able to save for their own retirement. They can get help from their employer. The employer can contribute to something like a 401k plan. We need to have more savings like that. Most American workers do not have one of these large, expensive pension plans. Most private sector workers 10 years from now will not have the old-fashioned pension either. They will have their own savings plan, either through a 401k plan or an individual retirement account. It's only government workers that are going to be getting these very, very rich, unfunded pensions.
So how about actual jail time? I mean, if, I'm sorry to bring up such a bad word, jail time,